Hello, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Ukrainian Pokrovsk. This city in the Donetsk region remains at the center of attention. The enemy has concentrated units from 3 different armies in the direction of Pokrovsk, advancing simultaneously from the north, south, and west. Thanks to a large number of personnel, the enemy managed to penetrate Pokrovsk and amass forces for further actions in the city and to disorient our forward positions by operating from the rear and the flanks. For more details on what is happening in the city right now, here is a report by TSN correspondent Yulia Kirienko.
These are drone pilots from the 25th Airborne trying to get out of Pokrovsk, where their positions were located. They are evacuating the wounded because they had to engage in small arms combat right in the residential neighborhoods of the city. Surprisingly, the occupiers advanced there very quickly. They are being spotted by the hundreds, and they are already taking up positions and mining the area. But most importantly, they are trying to block our infantry, which is still on the southern flanks, far from the city. Our forces are gathering reinforcements in the Pokrovsk direction. There are reports that the GUR is airlifting its special forces in by helicopter. The General Staff is bringing in assault units and SSO combat groups. All of this is to clear the residential neighborhoods of the occupiers. They are already strolling leisurely through the streets of Pokrovsk. As our reconnaissance drone recorded, they are driving civilians out of their homes, those who still remain among the city ruins. Enemy groups began infiltrating Pokrovsk through Zverovo, a village in the southwestern part of Pokrovsk. Then they moved on to Grishino to cut off the road from Pavlograd to Pokrovsk. It was there that the Russian tricolor was hung last week. However, within an hour, our FPV drones had already shot it down, but the enemy infantry remained in the city. Groups of Russians were spotted near the railway and in the central districts. The city is gradually turning into a gray zone, and the Russians have increased pressure on it and neighboring Mernograd from 3 sides. Russia has pulled together a force of as many as 11,000 occupiers to push our troops out of the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration. This is according to the 7th Corps, which is holding the defense there. And Putin has already claimed that both cities are blocked. But that's not true. Enemy infantry are being hunted down and destroyed, and it's anything but easy for them to advance.
In general, this is more like the movement of groups trying to gather at a distant point for further movement or crossing. The enemy may deploy small groups on motorcycles. Also, 2 days ago, there was an incident where 2 motorcycles with personnel were destroyed. Today, there have also been cases of motorcycle equipment being destroyed.
Russia is not acting in Pokrovsk in the same way as when our troops were once pushed out of the Kursk region. First, they filled the entire sky above our defenders with drones. So the infantry had to move into position for several days in a row, covering dozens of kilometers on foot with provisions and ammunition.
3 days, sometimes even more. They are forced to hole up somewhere and wait until the enemy shifts their attention away from them. If we're talking about Pokrovsk right now, groups are currently entering there on foot, and from there they move around the city.
Then they started putting pressure on the infantry from the flanks. Their task, according to the defense forces, is to reach the road that connects Pokrovsk and Mirnograd and block it, which would finally cut off the last lines of communication with our infantry, which still exists. At the moment, the General Staff states that our troops, despite the fighting in the city, are not encircled. This is indeed the case, as confirmed by open-source intelligence analysts. However, the infantry that has been stationed on the outskirts of Pokrovsk in the Lisovka and Novopavlovka areas for more than a year and a half is in a very difficult situation.
And here is another extremely important topic. Moscow residents need to prepare to survive in conditions of a lack of heat and electricity. This is evidenced by the systematic and precise strikes by Ukrainian defenders on the energy infrastructure and other military targets in the Russian capital. So what will happen next in the Whitestone city and the region? You'll find out now.
Ukrainian drones are striking the Russian power grid more frequently and on a larger scale. On the night of October 5th, Ukrainian UAVs attacked energy infrastructure in the Vladimir and Oryol regions. In Vladimir, the strike hit a 750-kilowatt substation in the suburbs. Local residents claimed that the city was attacked by missiles, not UAVs.
In
Oriol, explosions thundered in the area of the local CHP plant, the largest source of electricity and heat in the region. The attack was most likely a missile strike, since the video contains neither the sounds of air defense nor the buzzing of drones. Here,
that was the bang.
this is already the second attack on the Oriol CHP plant in the past week. On October 31st, it was hit by Neptune cruise missiles. At that time, the city was left without power. Also, on the last day of October, the Vladimir CHP plant was on fire.
Moreover, this substation supplies electricity to the central region, including Moscow, Vladimir, Nizhny Novgorod, and partly Ivanovo regions. In general, it also participates in power transmission from the Kalinin nuclear power plant to the Kostroma GRES and other major energy sources.
The stable operation of the Vladimir substation is critically important for the reliability of the Russian power system's balance. It is of particular significance. Energy from the Kalinin NPP is supplied through it. This makes the substation one of the key facilities for the Moscow energy hub. The SU wants to cause a blackout in the Whitestone city, striking substations around Moscow.
In recent weeks, attacks on important energy hubs have been recorded. Arzamatskaya 500 kilovolts on October 14th, Balashovskaya 500 kilovolts on October 16th and 25th, Vladimirskaya 750 kilovolts on October 17th and 31st, and November 5th, Vishkaima 500 kilovolts on October 18th, Novobryanskaya 750 kilovolts on October 29th, Lipetskaya 500 kilovolts on November 2nd, Frolovskaya 500 kilovolts on November 3rd. According to industry analysts, the goal of the strikes is to deprive Moscow of the ability to receive maneuverable electricity from the Volga hydroelectric power stations.
Before these strikes on substations, the head of Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brody, warned that Muscovites should start preparing for blackouts.
A blackout is nothing to be afraid of. The SBS birds, together with other components of Ukraine's deep strike capabilities, promise you a rapid, albeit forced, adaptation. But you'll manage. Matches, flashlights, candles. By the way, take this opportunity to use your favorite battery-powered garlands too. We won't be informing you about every 750 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt and so on installation damaged by the birds. Just go by the principle: light, warmth, boom, darkness, cold. And your open source intelligence in public channels is still working flawlessly, as long as there's internet. The strikes were announced and the strikes happened. And the enemy, even knowing which infrastructure would be targeted, was unable to organize an effective defense. There were announcements that blackouts were expected, and only after that did the drones take off. And
Only after that did the drones take off.
If such strikes continue, in the short term, Moscow will be left without electricity. Plus, strikes on gas storage facilities and gas distribution stations. Then the capital of the Russian Federation will be left not only without electricity, but also without heat.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Lyman front. The enemy army is acting true to form here as well. On the Lyman front, the occupying forces carried out 6 attacks on the positions of Ukrainian units near the settlements of Novoye Horivka, Hrekivka, and Zareknaya, Novoselivka, and towards the settlement of Korovy Yar. 4 combat clashes are ongoing. The number of wounded in Mykolaiivka, Dnipropetrovsk region has risen to 9. The occupiers struck the village almost simultaneously with a missile and a Shahed drone. A store on the main street was destroyed. At the time of the attack, there were many people there. One of the customers died at the scene. The owner, who was at the epicenter of the strike, and a 5-year-old girl are in serious condition in the hospital. Our correspondent from KTSN, Anastasia Naverna, will tell you more about the cynical attack by the treacherous enemy.
These are ruins that have been smoldering for the second day now. Here, a house and a family business, a store, are still burning. A distraught Lyudmila walks through the ruins of her daughter's house, trying to find anything that survived. She admits it's not for the sake of the belongings, but to distract herself from terrifying thoughts.
My daughter's leg was amputated and her arm was cut off. She's 37 years old with 2 children, and they took her to Dnipro. She screams, "Mom, don't cry, we'll still dance together."
Lyudmila says her daughter survived thanks to her son-in-law. He gave her first aid and protected her during the second attack, which also caused a lot of damage.
Her husband did a great job. He immediately bandaged everything for her, then fell on top of her and shielded her with his own body. The girl worked at the shawarma place. She also had her fingers cut off. In short, her leg, even her cap on her head melted.
Family, friends, and acquaintances are helping. They are clearing the rubble and taking away the remaining goods and equipment. Nearby, almost completely burned out trucks that were also at the epicenter of the strike. The house across from the site of the attack stands without windows and with a damaged roof. Miraculously, Dmitri's wife and 2 children survived inside. Because the man says everything happened instantly, there was no time to hide.
They didn't understand anything. They were buried here. Here, my son was sitting in the armchair, and by that window, my daughter was sitting. Their mother was lying on the couch here. They didn't even have time to be scared.
Everyone got away with minor injuries, Dmitri says, and a terrible fright. They don't even want to think about coming back.
My wife has some injuries. Her head was cut a little, not badly, but also her arm and leg. My son hurt his arm. My daughter apparently has a concussion. We took them to the hospital. There's no electricity in the hospital. They're taking us back somewhere. I don't know. We'll have to go somewhere else.
Neighbor Dmitri Ivan also nearly died. When he came to after the first explosion, he ran outside to see if anyone needed help.
I came out, just got here, and the cars were burning right over there. I stood here looking like this when I heard a drone coming from behind, a Shahed. I crouched down and crossed myself thinking, dear God, let it go somewhere else, but it flew right over me, about 15 to 20 meters above and straight into the cars. It flew about 15 to 20 meters above me.
And straight into the cars.
Realizing that he had survived for the second time, despite the danger, he rushed to save the victims.
People were screaming and I ran. We pulled out 3 people, but those who were screaming, they were screaming because they were wounded.
In this shelling, the Russians killed a woman and wounded her 5-year-old granddaughter, with whom she was going to the store to buy a cheburek. The child had to have her leg amputated as a result of the attack in the village. 9 people were injured, and the residents of more than 30 destroyed houses were left without a roof over their heads.
And now we move to the Aleksandrovsk direction of the front. The so-called Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. In the Aleksandrovsk direction, the enemy is trying to break through the defenses of our troops near the settlements of Seknevo, Verbovo, and Pervomaiskaya. Our soldiers repelled 3 enemy assaults. Another attack is still ongoing.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.